I'm Michelle. Standing in the driveway of my beach house, I watched as the last car of my sister's caravan disappeared down the road. The air was filled with the fading echoes of slamming doors and muffled voices. Just moments ago, this place had been a battlefield, but now, a profound silence settled over the house. My sister, Vivian, had arrived with her 22 in-laws, expecting to take over my house for a 2-week stay. She stepped out of the lead car like a queen surveying her kingdom, barking orders without even a thought for my feelings. But this time, I was ready. As I reflect on this moment, my mind drifts back to our childhood. We grew up in a small town in Kansas, in a family where our parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, had very different parenting styles. My father was a hard-working man, often away on business trips. My mother, on the other hand, was overly indulgent towards Vivian. Vivian was always the bold one, the center of attention. She would demand the best of everything, and our mother would comply without question. I remember birthday parties where she would throw tantrums if she didn't get the biggest slice of cake. Our mother would laugh it off and give in to her demands, while I sat quietly, accepting the smaller piece. In school, Vivian was the same. She would brag about her achievements, even if she hadn't done the work. I was the one who would stay up late to finish group projects, too tired to protest. By the time we reached high school, a pattern had been established. Vivian pushed, and I yielded. When our parents passed away, Vivian took control of the family estate. We were left with a large farm and a family home in Kansas. The farm was my father's pride and joy, with acres of wheat fields stretching as far as the eye could see. I wanted to keep it, to continue the family tradition. But Vivian insisted on selling it. "It's too much work," she said, though she had never set foot in the fields. Within a few months, the farm was sold to a large agricultural corporation, and our family's legacy was lost. Next was the family home. The house was filled with memories, the smell of my mother's baking still lingering in the air. I suggested restoring it and maybe living there. But Vivian had other plans. She hired contractors to tear down walls and gut the rooms. In a matter of weeks, the house was unrecognizable, our childhood memories destroyed. I kept quiet during all these decisions. I was tired of the arguments, and I thought that maybe if I just went along, things would get better. But as the years passed, I realized that Vivian's control was only tightening. After years of working long shifts at a local hospital, I managed to save enough money to buy a beach house in Nag's Head. It was a small, weather-worn house with wide windows and a view of the ocean. The day I closed the deal, I stepped out onto the deck, feeling a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. The wind carried the salty tang of the Atlantic, and for the first time, I let myself breathe deeply, as if the air truly belonged to me. But before I could even set down the folder with the deed, my phone rang. It was Vivian. Her voice came through the phone, sharp and commanding. "I'll be there in 3 hours with 22 of my in-laws. Clean the rooms and prepare meals for everyone. We're staying for 2 weeks." Her words felt like a punch in the gut. It was the same old pattern, her demanding and me expected to comply. I stood in the empty living room, looking at the ocean light spilling across the floorboards. I knew this tone, this demand. I had grown up with it, but this time, something was different. The deed in my folder was proof that I had finally stepped out from her shadow. I took a deep breath and decided not to fight on her terms. I remembered the notes I had scribbled in the margins of the folder during the house buying process. I had gathered contacts of local services, management companies, and rental agencies, thinking they might come in handy in the future. Now, they were my lifeline. I called a property manager in Nag's Head and explained that I needed the house booked immediately. He had a family from Miami Beach who had been waiting for an opening and were willing to pay above market rate for a last-minute stay. I set the contract in motion. Then, I called a catering company in Kitty Hawk to arrange for food delivery that evening. Finally, I called a moving crew to be on standby in case I needed help with linens and furniture. With each call, a strange calm settled over me. I was no longer the timid sister who would back down. I was deliberate and precise, as if every year of silence had been preparing me for this moment. As I waited for Vivian and her in-laws to arrive, I walked through the house, room by room. In the largest bedroom, I could picture Vivian claiming the view for herself, barking orders at everyone. But the thought no longer filled me with dread. It only strengthened my resolve. The property manager called back within the hour. The family from Miami Beach had wired the deposit, and they would arrive that evening. He promised to be there to oversee the handoff. I then walked into the kitchen and opened an envelope I had kept hidden for years. It contained photocopies of withdrawals Vivian had made from the family trust, transactions written under my name when I was too exhausted to fight. I remembered the nights I would come home from the hospital, smelling of disinfectant and exhaustion, while she drained the accounts I had helped build. I slid these documents into a fireproof safe in the closet. They were proof that I hadn't imagined the theft, and my silence had a cost. Just as the sun began to set, the first car pulled into the driveway. More cars followed, filling the street with unfamiliar license plates. Doors slammed, voices rose, and children ran across the sand path towards the porch as if they owned the place. Vivian stepped out of the lead car, her eyes scanning the house. She didn't knock, she just started directing people. Take the luggage upstairs. Put the groceries in the kitchen, she commanded. Her in-laws moved like a well-rehearsed army, ignoring me as if I was just a servant. I stood in the entryway, my hands at my sides, calm and steady. Years ago, I would have rushed to help, to make everyone comfortable. But now, I waited. When Vivian started barking orders about settling the children and finding spare linens, I finally spoke up. Don't unload, I said, my voice even and clear. Vivian turned, her eyes wide with disbelief, which quickly turned to irritation. What do you mean, don't unload? This is the house, and we're here, she snapped. I met her stare without flinching. Not tonight, Vivian. The house is booked. Paying guests arrive tonight. You'll need to take your things back to the cars. For a moment, there was silence. Everyone seemed to be processing my words. Then, confusion rippled through the group. Some of the in-laws shifted uncomfortably, looking at each other. One of the cousins muttered, "We didn't know." Just then, the property manager arrived. He greeted me politely and then addressed Vivian. "Ma'am, this property has been reserved for 2 weeks, paid in advance at above market rate. I'm here to prepare for the renter's arrival." Vivian's face turned red with anger. "This is ridiculous. We're your family. Strangers don't come before us." I took a deep breath and replied, "This isn't a family hostel. It's an investment I worked hard for, and it will start paying for itself tonight." As I said this, I could see the loyalty of her in-laws starting to waver. Some avoided my eyes, while others stepped back towards their cars. Vivian looked around, expecting someone to back her up, but the crowd behind her was no longer unified. I reached into my folder and pulled out the envelope with the bank records. I held it out between us. Vivian hesitated for a moment, then snatched it from my hand. As she flipped through the pages, her bravado faltered. Her hands began to shake, and I could see fear in her eyes. "If you ever touch this house," I said evenly, "every dollar you stole will become public record. The court, the community, everyone will know." A hush fell over the driveway. One of the in-laws, a man I hardly knew, took 2 children by the hand and led them back to the car. His eyes met mine briefly, filled with an apology that wasn't his to give. Vivian tried to rally, but her voice cracked. "You wouldn't dare." She hissed, but it lacked the force it once had. Her audience was thinning, and her power was unraveling. As more relatives got back into their cars and drove away, Vivian stood rooted in the driveway, clutching the envelope. She screamed in rage and humiliation, but there was no one left to listen. The caterers arrived, and the movers brought in fresh linens. The house was quickly transformed for the paying guests. The transition was seamless, as if Vivian's invasion had been just a minor interruption. That night, I carried a chair onto the deck and sat there, listening to the sound of the waves. The sand glistened in the moonlight, and the stars were bright in the sky. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had finally broken free from Vivian's control, and I knew that I would never let anyone erase me again. The beach house wasn't just a place to live, it was a symbol of my newfound strength and independence.